The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
Today on Darkside of the Pooch with Dr. Rab Stewart from the Rossbridge Animal Hospital. We're talking lost dogs, green dogs, adding a whole new meaning to doggy-style. The bark is worse than its bite, and we'll do some butt mail as well. He's Dr. Rab Stewart, and of course, he's always brought to you by our fine folks at Ed's Pet World. Nearly 50 years in business down there in beautiful Homewood, 879-1331. Seth, Ange, and the entire crew. They've got all kinds of great exotic pets. You name it, they've got it down there. They don't do dogs and kitties. They do everything but. And they also have some fantastic toys. Seth's toy closet is unbelievable, and he is opening his own brick and mortar. We'll give you some more details on that, but check out Ed's Pet World. A wonderful place. I get all my pet needs met down there at Ed's Pet World. Dr. Rab, how you doing, brother? I know you were out of town. Happy day back. And I can't wait to get into some wonderful mutt mail and some other great stuff here on Dark Side of the Pooch.
Thanks, man. It's great to be back.
You're ready to get after it?
Absolutely.
Now, I'm assuming since you just came back from vacation, you're with your lovely bride. Did you have your kids with you?
No, sir.
Okay.
First time in a long time.
So I'm betting there may have been a little intimacy. According to the pet sitting service Rover, which just came out last Friday, they say that 51% of all U.S. pet parents say their pets have intervened or interrupted romantic time with their partner. It goes on to say that 42% of pet owners say they'd have more intimacy with their partner if they knew they didn't have a pet. And 21% of those people say they actually hire the pet sitting service when they think they're going to have some intimacy with their mate. These are people that got some serious problems. Now, I think we can all speak to this. We've all been in a situation where we start dating somebody, we start kissing on the couch, and the dog won't get off our lap, or there's a licking somewhere on our elbow or whatever when perhaps we're trying to consummate something. But when you have a dog or a cat that you've had for quite some period of time, and yes, they are a family member, but they won't leave you alone during intimacy, what does that say about your pet, and how can we fix it?
Yeah, it might have a little bit of separation anxiety, and I can see that happening. I mean, it doesn't. I have yet to have any personal experience with that because my dog is, he's pretty well socialized and he's fine to, if the door closes, and he knows he can't come in, he's okay. But
Yeah.
Just from what we do here, and the veterinary practice is a little bit different, but trying to get a pet away from the owner sometimes is really difficult. So if they act the same way they do in our office at home, then I could see how it could really get in the way of, times of intimacy. So it starts early with puppies to socialize them, to be sure that they're around a lot of different people, to be sure they're around a lot of different dogs, and to be sure that they have time alone. That stuff's really important so that they know and they learn that if you're gone or out of their sight, that the world is not coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you socialize them at an early age, but if you can't do that, because there's a lot of dogs that maybe were adopted after that socialization window has closed, even in a late age. And some of these dogs that are relinquished to shelters maybe were relinquished because of a separation anxiety issue. So if that is the problem, then it's probably going to take medication and a course of training to break that problem, with separation anxiety. But the other thing is like, I swear some of this stuff, it's like a codependency. It really is, where they, the owner needs that animal to have separation anxiety because it makes the owner feel good.
Yeah, and I'll say this: if my animal's getting in the way of being intimate with my girlfriend or my wife, whom I'm probably only being with once every 2 or 3 weeks anyway, there may be a different type of separation anxiety, maybe with my wife. Talk about that, because we talked about my next door neighbor with an Australian Shepherd, and you're like, put it in the kennel and leave it alone. Talk about what it means. We think as pet owners that the more we're with our animal, the more the animal will be sociably endearing to whatever type of atmosphere it's in. In other words, it'll be okay to be left alone. But that's not true, right? It needs to be alone for a while, right?
It definitely needs to be alone occasionally. If only to figure out that there's a problem or not. You have to, they're like kids. Like you got to test them a little bit to see how they're going to act, because sometimes despite our best efforts, a dog may have separation anxiety. I mean, you think about, so many things can be related to people. If you think about people, they may not have a whole lot of big trauma in their life, but they're still anxious. And so dogs and cats may be the same way. So it's important to give them some time by themselves. And initially you want to start really small, give them 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then a half hour, then an hour. I mean, you would hope that a pet would be able to be okay on its own for, an 8-hour workday, because let's face it, most people work for a living and they've got to leave their pet alone. So you've got to start with short intervals of separation and be sure that they're okay with it.
And maybe a lot of this has to do with the fact that we have been working from home for the last 2 or 3 years, and now more people are working from home. We're now talking about going to a 4-day work week, so we're going to be around our animals even more. And evidently, Google's not the first one to start it, but now they're saying there's this movement where we can bring our pets to work. Listen, I love my dogs as much as anything, but I also value my time alone, and I love my dogs, and I love being around them, but I don't want them around me 24 hours a day, so that's very, very interesting. Mutt Mail, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, 208-0301 is the phone number for the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, at Rossbridge Vet on Twitter, the Rossbridge Animal Hospital on Facebook. I just sent you a picture. Did you get it on your phone?
Let me see.
There's a couple in Nova Scotia who just helped birth a green puppy.
Wow, I see it.
It's they're saying it's Biliverdin, is that right? It's the chemical that actually causes the greening or the bluing of bruises, on occasion, contaminates. Billy Rubin.
Yeah.
Billy Rubin.
I was like, when you said it, I was like, oh,
Billy
man,
Rubin, yeah.
Here comes Tony again with something I've never heard of. I don't know what the heck he's talking about. I was like, oh, it's Billy Rubin.
It contaminates the placenta and the amniotic food, and it actually dyes some dogs blue, purple, and or green. They say it's a 1 in 10,000 thing. I'd say it's a 1 in a million. I've never seen it. Have you ever seen? I mean, this pup, we'll post it on Tony Curry Radio on Twitter. It is as green gets. And this dog was birthed on St. Patty's Day of all day, which is amazing. Have you ever seen a blue dog, a green dog, a purple dog, or ever seen a dog like that?
Not unless we're talking about Dr. Seuss, and I don't think those are dogs. No, I've never seen anything like this, but I would be, if it's an increase in Billy Rubin, I would be worried about, like, if there's a medical condition, like, whether it's red blood cells or it's liver or something, but maybe it has nothing to do with that. But that's amazing. I mean, it's green. I mean, it's green.
No, it looks like someone dyed it green. It really is. And they said that the litter was 8 puppies. 7 were born fine. This was the last one. It was still inside the sack, and they thought it was stillborn, and then it started to move, so they broke the sack open, and here it was, this green puppy, and they're like, whoa, this is super cool.
So St. Patrick's Day is when it was born. Do you know if it's still alive?
I do not know. I have not seen anything, but it evidently was healthy when it was born, so I'm assuming it's okay.
Wow.
Info@TonyCurryRadio.net. We got some great mutt mail we'll get into in just a few seconds. Of course, he's Dr. Rab Stewart there, the Rossbridge Animal Hospital. A couple other stories I want to get into. You mentioned a great story about, was it your brother that was gone for a long period of time and he came back to visit you and your dogs knew exactly who he was?
Yeah, it's my brother-in-law.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw this story. A missing, what kind of dog was this? An Australian Shepherd in Alaska. Miraculously, and this just happened 3 days ago, returned home after a 150-mile jaunt through the frozen Bering Sea. People had lost their dog for about a month. They started posting things in town in Wales, which is roughly about 200 miles away. They posted a picture of a found Australian Shepherd. They got on Facebook, saw it, and realized this dog had gone 150 miles over the course of a month and a half to get back home. It did have a huge bite out of its side. They're believing that's either from a polar bear or a seal, but it made it home okay. If for sake of science here, and I would never do this, obviously, but if I'm living with my dog for like 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right, and it's a good, smart dog, and I drive it like 15 miles away from my house and put it in the woods, would it make it back to my house? Or is this one of those stories that's just miraculous?
I mean, I think I wouldn't say it's a miraculous story, but I would say that the odds of that dog making that trek are not great. And mostly because there's just a lot of adversity. And
Well,
I,
assuming there's no adversity, okay, let's just say that it doesn't need to eat, it doesn't need to drink anything, there's no highway traffic, there's nothing that's going to kill it. But if I would take a pet in the middle of the woods and just drop it off 3 miles away, would it make its way back?
I think history tells us that it would,
Yeah.
because you hear stories like this occasionally. But just like, okay, even if you take adversity out of it, think about, there are some people that have a knack for, tracking things. They know where to go. They know what to look for. And I bet dogs are the same way. Some probably have a greater skill than others when it comes to knowing where to go. But it's not like there's a scent that's been left because you walked through the woods. I mean, this is somebody getting in their car and driving a long distance and not leaving any type of reference, and then the dog getting back to them. And I just find that almost impossible.
Yeah, I mean,
to happen.
If you were making a 150-mile drive every day, say for work, and that dog was seeing where you were going, I could make a justification of that's still miraculous. It's crazy. My dogs know when they see my neighborhood. They see things. My Australian Shepherd notices different areas of my neighborhood. They know we're getting close to the house. And it's not because my car is slowing down or I'm taking certain turns. He recognizes the neighborhood. So I could see. But to have an animal 150 miles away that has no clue where it's at and somehow make it back to this house is just amazing to me. I mean, it's incredible. It really is.
Yeah, I think I don't know what the odds are, but I think that a lot of people probably think that, oh, well, this would happen a lot because you hear about this a lot. And there's that one movie with Benji or whatever the name of that dog is.
Yeah.
But the thing to remember is I think that this would be incredibly unlikely.
Yeah. All right. Download the TKR app. You can hear the show at least 5 days a week, every single day of the week, Monday through Friday. We do classic rock on the weekends, along with 13 other shows we do. We do Blues Almighty. We do the Damon Johnson Show, When in Rome, the Kiefer and Kurre Show, the Curry and Claypo Show. We got all kinds of great shows. And Darkside, the Pooch, Mission Minded, you name it. Check out all of our shows. And, of course, you can go to the Tony Curry Radio Podcast Network. Our podcasts are blowing the doors off. Check it out. You can listen to all of our previous shows. You got any questions for Dr. Rab Stewart? We read every one of them, like this one here from Eve, who wants to know, where does the name Rab come from on Dr. Rab Stewart?
I know the answer to this one.
There you
I do. I know the answer to most of them, but I definitely know this one. So Rab it's a Scottish version of Bobby. So it's a Scottish nickname for Robert. And I am the third. So my grandfather was the first Robert Stewart, and my dad was the second. And they wanted something different for me because my dad was Bobby and my grandfather was Bob. And so my family has Scottish, ancestry in it. And so that's where they came up with Rab.
I love that. That's very, very good. That's super.
Good question.
There you go. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. Stan in Huntsville wants to know, he's heard the dogs are now taking Viagra. What's up?
They take it for pulmonary hypertension.
Okay.
They take it because they have cardiovascular issues. So it helps bring that high blood pressure in their lungs down. Dogs that have cardiovascular issues, they will, could potentially develop this problem. It leads to coughing and things like that. So it's one of the medications that we use for cardiovascular issues, particularly pulmonary hypertension, which is what it was developed for in people until it caused them to have another welcome side effect.
Yeah,
let's say.
Whoever the pharmaceutical company was that did Viagra, they hit the jackpot, didn't they? It does what now? And next thing you know, now you cannot get enough of it. Jules in New York City. This may be our first email in New York City. She wants to know, what is leptospirosis? Leptospirosis? Leptospirosis. And is there a vaccine? What is that?
There is a vaccine for it. And it's actually a type of bacteria that attacks the kidneys of animals. It is passed through wild dogs, and it is passed in their urine. So if you live in suburban areas where you have wild dogs, your dog is susceptible to leptospirosis. So the wild animal urinates that out. The domestic animal comes in contact with the urine. They usually drink it through like a water source, so like a pond or a creek or even standing water sometimes. And that's how they develop leptospirosis. Handling of the urine is a big, it doesn't go through the skin, but if you're exposed to the urine, if a human is exposed to it, then they can get leptospirosis too. So it is what we call a zoonotic disease. That's why it's so important that we do vaccinate for it, because it is transmissible to people, and it's also kind of hard to diagnose and treat. So it's one of those diseases that's just a lot easier to vaccinate for and limit the ability of the dog to get it than it is to treat it.
I went further down her email a little bit. She said something about rats. Is it something that is prevalent in rats?
Rodents. Yes, rodents can have it too. Okay. Yeah, squirrels, chipmunks. So it's something that we recommend at our place, that the pet's vaccinated for every year, unless it's one of these dogs that just doesn't really go outside at all. Like maybe go to the bathroom in the house on pee pad, or some dogs have these little fake grass areas that you can buy, and the dog is trained to go on that in the house. So if they spend much time outside at all, it's a recommended vaccine. It's not a core vaccine, but it's something that's important if they're exposed.
What's the difference between a core vaccine and a regular vaccine? What is that?
A core vaccine is something that you will want to give it to every dog, no matter what, and the other vaccines are what we call lifestyle vaccines.
Gotcha. All right, cool. That's what a lot of people thought the COVID thing was, I guess, evidently, a lifestyle vaccination. We saw how that worked out. Earl in Birmingham. I was perfect because I was just asking you about this before we started the show. He wants to know what's too hot temperature-wise to put your dogs in the car and leave them for a while. Now, this is a loaded question because we hear about human beings, unfortunately, being left in cars, and it's just it's a horrible situation. It happens every single year. Now we have different things. Leave your purse in the back seat so you make sure you don't forget Bobby or whatever you're doing. I tend to, first of all, I look to see if I'm taking my dogs with me. I try not to make it any warmer than, say, 72 or 73. It depends on how humid it is. It depends on whether they've had a haircut. And the most important thing is if I can't find them shade, I know it's going to get really hot in the car. I watch the Weather Channel enough. I think within the first 30 minutes, it's more than 15 degrees warmer than it is the outside temperature, and then it gets over 30 degrees warmer in certain circumstances. What is Dr. Rab's word of knowledge when it comes to how warm it could be in a car before you leave your pets, and then how long?
The easiest thing to go by is if it's too hot for you to sit in a car. Like if you get uncomfortable in the car with the car off, if the windows can be down, then fine, but some dogs will jump out, or some people are afraid to leave their windows down. So sometimes that's not an option. So if you want to leave the windows down, or if you want to leave them up, that's fine. But if you're sitting in the car and you have it the way you want it for you, if it's too hot for you to be in the car, then it is way too hot for the dog to be in the car. So if you cannot sit in the car comfortably, for whatever duration of time you're going to leave the dog in there, then the dog does not need to stay in the car.
That's a great way of looking at it. I never thought about that. That's perfect. All right, that's awesome. info@TonyCurryRadio.net, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. The bark is definitely worse than the bite. We're going to talk about a TikTok trend here in a second to take us home. We'll get into that in just a second. But first, Tim in Frankfurt, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. I got this issue too. He said, I love walking my dogs. I do it at least 3 days a week. But all they want to do is sniff and roll. I want to walk. I want to get exercise. He said, if I go to a park or anywhere else with his other dogs, my dogs will not walk. He said, but I see other people walking their dogs, and their dogs don't have to stop at every stinking tree or every embankment or everything to take a whiz or a roll. How can I keep my dogs from doing this? He goes, I feel bad that I'm constantly pulling my dogs along their walk trails. Your thoughts?
My dog does the same thing. And he, just walking from my truck to my office, he's got to smell everything and pee on everything. So I feel your pain. There are kind of helpful devices that you can use. They make these things called gentle leaders, which are they're collars, but there's a little nose loop, and it helps to kind of lead them and keep them on track. It keeps them from wanting to pull you off to the side. So that's something that people use a lot.
What's it called again?
A gentle leader.
Gentle
leader. And it's you can think of it almost as a collar that goes around their nose.
Oh, wow.
So it prevents pulling. And so if the dog is, because that's what happens, the dog pulls you to get to the stop sign, or, to get to the fire hydrant, or to get to some interesting smelling piece of grass. So if you can use something like that to keep them from pulling and keep them on task, then that might help. But you can also use prong collars, because if they pull against that, if they're fitted properly, then it's going to cause a little bit of discomfort, and they will probably stop pulling and walk more beside you. And that way, if they're walking beside you and you continue to walk, they're going to continue to walk. And if you want to give them a little, smell break or whatever, then, you just don't hold the leashes tight, give them, like we say with horses, give them some reins, and then they can explore.
I tell you, the prong collar is one of the greatest things. I mean, it's so primitive. It's so easy and perfect. Whoever created it, but it works. It's unbelievable. I mean, and my dog's smart enough to know that sometimes it's more of a pain to put it on than just having a regular leash on. But when he hears that thing and he knows not to pull and run off at everything else, it's just amazing. The prong collars definitely work.
Yeah,
all right.
Our listeners are about to get a really big dose of Chester. This dog named Chester. Can you hear Chester?
Hey, Chester.
Chester just got here.
Did he? Hey, Chester. Hey, boy.
Yeah.
All right, info at TonyCurryRadio.net, the number 205-208-0301. Listen, we're already in April. Vacation's right around the corner. You need to board your animals. It's the best place. It's like a spa at that place. So Rossbridge Animal Hospital, make sure you call them early because they fill up very, very quickly. 208-0301 at Rossbridge Vet on Twitter, and the Rossbridge Animal Hospital on Facebook. All right, so this final story, and I think it's hilarious, and we've seen a lot of videos of it on TikTok. It was a trend a couple of weeks ago, and now people have gotten hurt. Several people have had their faces ripped off, and at least one small child was killed in Connecticut. It's called the barking at your dog trend. Have you seen this?
No, that sounds terrible.
It really is. And it's not, I've barked and howled at my dogs. I can get my dogs to howl when I start howling real loud. But it's basically sitting next to your dog very quietly, and your face is almost touching your dog's face, and just letting out a really loud bark and watching their response. Some of them are hilarious. If you pull up barking at your dog trend, you'll see some videos that are really, really funny because dogs don't know what's going on. But in a lot of cases, it scares the hell out of the dog. It freaks out. And the first thing they do is they start to nip. They start to take a bite of the person's face that's right next to them. Any thoughts on why dogs do this and how to avoid from falling into the pitfalls of a social media trend?
If you have a dog that has any level of anxiety or fear, then you definitely should not do this, because it's not that the dog thinks that you're a dog and it's going to want to bite you. It just scares it. Yeah. And when dogs are scared, they do one of two things. They either flight or they fight.
Yeah. And
obviously the kid in Connecticut, that dog fought. So yeah, I just don't freak your dogs out. Freak your kids out. That's better. Your kids, they're not going to bite you. Freak your kids out, not the dogs.
And it goes for
cats. Or the
cats.
cats.
We always wonder why cats are so freaky and why they jump and they freak out about things, but yet that's the number one video on YouTube. Just pull up cat videos, and people just love to scare the bejeebers out of their cats, and we wonder why they're so freaked out. They're not friendly with us. It's because we scare the bejeebers out of our cat. Put a giant carrot behind your cat on the front porch and watch it jump 14 feet in the air. Dr. Reb, tell people how they can find you, my man.
You can call us at 208-0301. You can find us on Facebook at Rossbridge Animal Hospital, or you can email us at rossbridgeanimalhospital@gmail.com.
You're the man. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, and thanks for coming back.
Until next time.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.